Good morning, rise and shine to the morning momentum, your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines. Today is 22nd of January and we want to take a look at the top stories making the headlines. But before then, this is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs and expert opinion. My name is Alfonsoh. The hashtag on X is the morning momentum at Younib Media TV at Alfonsoh Albakwekwe. Now, let's take a look at the top stories on the Daily Nation this morning. Ruto'S state jobs shocker. Now, 9 public corporations face dissolution while 16 others will be sold. Now, thousands of civil servants countrywide are staring at job losses after the cabinet yesterday approved plans to merge, restructure, dissolve, or sell off government-owned farms in a bid to boost efficiency and service delivery while reducing costs and aligning with IMF budgetary support program. Now, among the merged state corporations include the Higher Education Loans Board, there is a Tourism Research Institute, we have under Export Processing Zones Authority, there is the Special Economic Zones Authority, there is Kenya Industrial Property Institute, Kenya Industrial Estate Fund, there is Water Towers Agency, Kenya Animal Genetic Resource Center, National Water Harvesting and Storage Authority, National Council for Law Reporting, the Tourism Fund, there is also Kenya Urban Roads Authority, Water Regulatory Authority, there is National Cereals and Produce Board, Kenya Institute of Primate Research, National Biosafety Authority, among others. So 42 state corporations with duplicating, overlapping or related mandates that are to be merged into 20 entities. They are those ones that we have mentioned. Now, on other stories on page 8 this morning, give us teeth to bite, NCIC seeks control over peace rallies. Now, in proposals to MPs, the Commission wants to be granted powers, including to determine what constitutes a peace-building mission. That story is beefed up for you on page 8 this morning. On page 6 and page 7 this morning, it's all about femicide. Woman and 2 girls murdered. Now, Beth Mudhoni's pilgrimage to Thiririka Shrine in Kiambu County on January 16th in search of tranquility and communion with her creator through prayer ended tragically when she was raped and murdered. In nearby Kajiado County, the families of Ashley Wairimu and Precious Nderema, both aged 13 and in grade 8 and grief-stricken after the bodies of the girls who went missing after church on Sunday were found in a water-filled quarry on Monday. Early yesterday. That story is beefed up for you on page 6 and on page 7. On the international scene this morning, Trump pardons Capitol attackers after taking office. Now, Donald Trump pardoned about 1,500 of his supporters who attacked the U.S. Capitol 4 years ago as he moved to impose his will on the U.S. government just hours after reclaiming the presidency. That story is beefed up for you on page 16. Now, let's get up close and candid with the Nation on page 2. Politics was his cup of tea, says mother of President of Molo. That is quote unquote. Now, area police boss says they are yet to arrest any suspect, but adds that they have a lead they are following. Now, protests erupted in Elbugon following the murder of activist Richard Otieno. Now, at a glance, Otieno made enemies in politics. Now, after establishing a strong bond with local communities, Richard Otieno caught the political bug, which saw him seek an elective seat in 2022. He contested the Elbugon ward representative post under Usawa Party, but lost. However, he had on several occasions hinted at making another attempt in 2027, but as he engaged in politics, Otieno rubbed some political heavyweights the wrong way and received threats on his life, which he shared on social media. His widow said that the last week Otieno had informed her that there were people tracking his movements. That story is beefed up for you on page 2. On page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning, how WhatsApp chats on office computer landed two in trouble. Now, judge reinforces stand on use of company devices. Makini school best decision to dismiss the staff on information found in chats. Now, 4 years ago, blogger Cyprian Nyakundi published on his website some information about Makini schools. The post has since been deleted. The school's management immediately began investigating how the information it later described as defamatory threats reached the blogger. Somehow, as a Nairobi court was later told, a school laptop being used for a suspended human resource staff was still logged on to WhatsApp. Officials at the school went through his chats the court had and found material to suggest that he was discussing some of the matters that the blogger had written on the social media. Now, let's say a little bit on page 3. Boss dragged into 100 million shillings land row. National Assembly Deputy Speaker Gladys Boss Sholei has been dragged into the ongoing court case on the ownership of a 100 million shillings piece of land involving two families in Uasin Gishu County. Now, the name of Gladys was introduced in the matter by a petitioner, Abraham Chebi, a senior driver employed by the Judicial Service Commission. He on Monday told an Eldoret court that his life was in danger following alleged threats from Miss Boss concerning the land. That story is beefed up for you on page 3. Let's take a look at page 4. Job losses loom as parastatals face mergers and closures. Now, Union of Kenya Civil Servants Secretary General Tom Odege, in a swift response following the recommendation and the reality of job cuts, cautioned against any retrenchments. Cabinet notes that 9 state corporations should be dissolved, 42 merged, and another 6 restructured in a far-reaching plan reminiscent of the 1990s push by the IMF. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5. Now, let's stay a little bit on page 5. State allocates 22 billion shillings to connect 300,000 households to the national grid. Now, President William Ruto has said the Kenya Kwanza government, in collaboration with development partners, has provided 22 billion shillings to connect 300,000 households to electricity across 32 counties. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 6. Friends till death, families in grip of grief. Now, grieving father, a swimming trainer, disputes claims that his daughter could have drowned. Remains of grade 9 pupils, Ashley and Precious, found in Ololua Quarry after going missing. This is all about the clouds of gloom. Now, age of Ashley Wairimo and Precious Nderema, who were found dead in Quarry, were 13 years old, respectively. Let's take a look at page 7. Woman's pilgrimage to shrine ends in murder. Now, postmortem conducted at Kenyatta University Funeral Home revealed fatal head injury was inflicted at a close range. Now, according to a police report seen by Nation, Beth Mudhoni's body had visible injuries, including a broken front jaw and fractured left hand and a cracked skull. Now, let's stay there on the cases of femicide a little bit. Man charged with murder of 4 Isili women. Now, a Somali national linked to the gruesome murder of 4 women in Nairobi's Isili was yesterday charged with 4 counts of murder. Mr. Hashim Dagane, alias Hashim Halif, was presented in court in a virtual hearing where he denied the charges. Appearing before High Court Judge Kanyi Kimondo, Mr. Dagane pleaded not guilty to the murders of Ms. Dahabo Dawood Said, Ms. Amina Dahir, Ms. Musiaba Abdi Mohammed, and Ms. Deka Abdi Nur Gorane. You want to catch up with that story on page 7. Also on page 7, police hunt for suspect who defiled and killed a daughter. Police in Kajiado South are looking for a man suspected to have defiled and killed his firstborn daughter in Isinet town on Monday night. Kajiado South Sub-County Police Commander Kiprotich Chepkwony yesterday said preliminary investigations indicate that the 14-year-old girl, a grade 8 pupil, was defiled and strangled in her father's matrimonial bed. That story is beefed up for you on page 7. Let's move on and take a look at page 8. No more peace meetings without NCIC approval. Now, organizations or individuals will be required to provide peace project details, including source of funding. Commission says power to regulate meetings will help to weed out pretenders. You want to catch up with that story on page 8. On page 9 this morning, MPs want tougher rules for ambassadorial jobs. Now, committee roots for more appointments of career diplomats. Lawmakers also tell state officials to consult before nominating individuals to reduce cases of appointments being declined. That story is beefed up for you on page 9. Let's move on and take a look at another story here. Nakuru doctor challenges Ruto'S PSC appointments. Now, a Nakuru-based doctor, Benjamin Magare Gikenyi, has moved to the High Court to challenge the appointment of 4 commissioners of the Public Service Commission, arguing that they were not qualified. The medic and lawyer Eliud Matindi claims that the appointments of PSC Vice Chairperson Mary Kimonye and Commissioners Boya Molu, Irene Asiega, and Francis Major contravened the Constitution. You want to catch up with that on page 9. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 10. Ruto plan to vaccinate 22 million cows and 50 million goats begin next week. Now, full quarantine has been enforced in Kakamega, West Pokot, and Trans Nzoia counties. State seeks to curb spread of deadly foot and mouth disease, which can lock Kenya out of lucrative export market. That story is beefed up for you on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's move on and take a look at the expert opinion. Invest in digital pathology to transform healthcare. Now, digital pathology is actively reducing downtime by physical distances by fostering online connections. These are sentiments by Maureen Waithaka, a health practitioner, and you want to catch up with more of that on the expert opinion on page 12. Now, let's move on swiftly and take a look at another article here for the motoring enthusiast. This morning on the DN2 motoring article, fix that worn-out engine today. Delay will only increase the rate of wear and add to the remedial cost. You will catch up with that on the DN2 motoring article. Now, let's move on and take a look at county news this morning. Now, scared cows. Slum residents cry foul over demolition of property. Government flattened structures along Gong, Nairobi, and Mathare rivers to curb flooding. Duale denies claims of discrimination, says all buildings on riparian land will be brought down. You want to catch up with that on page 15. Let's move on and take a look at Isiolo County. Herders raise the alarm as wildfires persist. Now, an alarm has been sounded on raging wildfires in Isiolo County as they threaten to wipe out huge chunks of grazing land in the semi-arid region. The fires that have destroyed nearly 200,000 acres in Merti are linked to an attempt by herders to fight tick infestation in the expansive grazing lands. That story is beefed up for you, 15. Now, quickly, let's shift gears and take a look at international news. Trump pardons 1,500 Capitol attackers after taking office. He has portrayed himself as a savior chosen by God to rescue a faltering nation. US President also outlines sweeping executive orders on immigration climate. He has portrayed himself as a savior chosen by God to rescue a faltering nation. That story is beefed up for you on page 16. Now, briefly in Goma, Congo rebels seize eastern Minova town. Democratic Republic of Congo's M23 rebels have seized the eastern town of Minova, a rebel spokesperson said. The Tutsi-led M23 group has been waging a renewed insurgency in the Central African countries East since 2022. Congo and the UN accuse Rwanda of backing the group with its own troops and weapons. Rwanda has denied these. Now, in Kampala, Uganda launches national update over voters register. Uganda's Electoral Commission has launched the general update of the National Voters Register, an exercise running until February 10th in preparation for the 2026 general elections. The update aims to register new voters and update voter details to ensure all eligible citizens can vote. You want to catch up with that story on page 16. In Dar es Salaam, Tanzania confirms Marburg virus disease outbreak. Now, Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan confirmed the country's second outbreak of Marburg virus disease in 2 years. Speaking at a joint news conference with World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom, Hassan said that laboratory tests identified one person in Biharamulo district as infected with MVD. Now, let's take a look at Accra in Ghana. Sorry. President initiates process to review country's law. Now, Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama has named an 8-member committee to lead the process of reviewing the 1992 Constitution. The committee is supposed to use 5 months to present its recommendations for a constitutional amendment to the government for consideration. That story is beefed up for you on page 16. Quickly, let's take a look at business news. Now, Ruto targets 13.4 trillion shillings in taxes during first term. A large number of measures by state face public resistance, pressure from IMF and unpopular policies not endearing leadership to Kenyans. You want to catch up with that on page 18. Now, briefly in the financial sector, trans-century stock rallies 31% after profit. Infrastructure investment firm TransCentury PLC share price rallied by 30.9% yesterday after the firm posted a rare 375 million shillings net profit in half year ended June 2024. In matters investment, M-Pesa backed money market fund at 2.85 billion shillings. Safaricom's new money market fund has booked 2.85 billion shillings since debuting in December last year, overshadowing the initial fund that was merged by partnership wrangles. In the real estate sector this morning, property firm starts graduate news this morning. We start with the motorsport industry. Awards gala to launch action-packed season. Now, Safari Rally from March 20. African Classic Rally will conclude the season from December 7th. You want to catch up with that on page 25. Briefly in the NBA, Pelicans recover to beat Jazz. Now, in the Australian Opens, Djokovic powers into semi-final cars in a gladiator battle worthy of a title clash to charge into the Australian Open semi-finals yesterday and remain in the hunt for a record 25th Grand Slam title. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 26. Bob Munro, Canadian who bestrode Kenyan football scene like a colossus. And if you add the influence I have on improving Kenyan football, you are looking at millions of players. Those are sentiments of Bob Munro way before he passed on. Now, with the success of Maisa, he found Mathare United FC in 1994 and the team quickly shook the established club football order. You want to catch up with all that on page 25. On page 27, Cheche eyes back-to-back World Cup appearances. Coach announces camp this weekend to prepare for qualifier against Uganda. You want to catch up with that on page 27. Now let's take a look at the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. Teachers battle for 25,000 slots. Vacancies include 9,179 positions for post-primary and 16,109 for primary schools. This highlights high demand for career advancement opportunities among the tutors. Now, hard times for tea workers as factories cut costs. Thousands of workers in the tea industry could lose their jobs as multinationals implement cost-cutting measures following an acute shortage of green leaves caused by drought. You want to catch up with that on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, Kiama set to be replaced as PSC advertises Vice Chancellor job. Now, the Public Service Commission has advertised the position of University of Nairobi Vice Chancellor to replace Professor Stephen Kiama. Also advertised was the Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic Affairs role at the same university and one vacancy for Deputy Chancellor. All that is beefed up for you on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. Now, with that story of the University of Nairobi, we come to an end of today's session of the Morning Momentum. We say thank you to all of you for choosing to stay with Younib TV and for tuning in to the Morning Momentum. Our heartfelt gratitude by extension goes to all those who made this broadcast a success. Behind the lens, John Kariuki, and the chief controller today has been Peninah Wachera. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Wednesday. I have been your host, Alfonsoh.